Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dragon Talk. I have Mr. Jeremy Crawford here. Hello.
Hi there.
How's it going?
I'm doing great.
We are, I just had to pull him out of a very important meeting. Doing all kinds of fun stuff here for Dungeons & Dragons. But with Shelly not being able to be here dealing with some things on the family front, we are going to record our intros and outros for this next episode of Dragon Talk together. This will be fun.
Marvelous. I haven't done this in ages, doing
Right?
intros and outros.
Didn't you did a version of this podcast with you and Mike?
Years ago. Yeah, back with 4th edition. Mike and I did the D&D podcast back then.
Right? And it was just conversations.
Yes.
About what was happening with D&D Next
Yeah,
at the time.
we would just come on and talk and talk and talk.
Was it before it was D&D Next, or was the playtest actually going
No,
at that
this
point?
was even before D&D Next. It was deep in 4th edition. Bart was our producer.
Nice.
He would, back then, since we weren't using Twitter and whatnot, he would bring in printed out mailbag questions.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I would answer rules questions even back then
Nice.
on that podcast. And we would have to keep track of, all right, which of these printed out emails did we answer in previous episodes of the podcast?
We were so low tech.
Yes. Yep.
Recording in conference rooms, right?
It was in a conference room upstairs with like a ratty sofa and other random things pasted up on the wall to provide a semblance of soundproofing. It was pretty funny.
That is funny.
Yeah.
And then when I got here 4 years ago, it was a version of that, but it was on microphone, but like at different conference rooms, basically whenever was available. And Ryan had to come in and set up his soundboard in different areas all over the building.
With a faint echo in the back. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Again, nothing was soundproofed.
The best part was when there'd be like a loud, boisterous meeting next door.
And you'd hope they weren't talking about anything too secret.
Right.
As if you really turned up the volume on the podcast and like, oh, we now know what 3 products are coming up.
Right. Oh, that's not a good look for the company. Luckily, we have all this soundproofing in here, which makes that completely impossible.
Unless I start blurting out things we're about to come out with.
No.
That meeting that you pulled me out of was a design meeting for a book way in the future.
Wow. Like,
Dun, dun,
dun,
dun.
dun. 15 years in the future of
Yes.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
If only we had that long of a roadmap.
Yeah.
But we do. Or do we? 45 years into the future. Yeah. All right. So what we're going to...
We'll see if we're even alive in 45 years.
This planet, you mean? Yes.
Well, the planet, but also just some of us as individuals.
Because as we were saying earlier, we're old.
Yes. Some of us are older than we look.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm actually 600 years old. I'm Durnan. The fourth, as the case may be. So what we're going to do in this hour is record the intro for this next episode of the podcast. Then we'll do our midtro and then close it out with the outro, which are terms that I guess people use, but I don't know. We just kind of latched onto those as our naming of segments from A to B here. So thank you for filling in. We were going to record a sage advice during this hour to put into the banks, but I thought it made sense for us to talk through because you were recently honored. So we're going to talk about that in the intro and what all that means. Because it is June, after all.
Yes.
But of course, you do amazing stuff all throughout the year, but it's also, I don't know, just seemed to make sense. So thank you for jumping in. All right. Do you have any questions before we actually start recording?
And I am ready to basically smile and say I'm happy to be here. That's my main job.
Exactly. And offer color commentary. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, I will go through some of the products and stuff that we've announced, as well as talking about Baldur's Gate 3, Descended to Avernus, D&D Live. So we've got a lot of things to hit, as well as the Acquisitions Incorporated book that's coming out soon. So I do go through and kind of hit like where our top level things are into. And you worked on a couple of those, didn't you?
I sure did. And when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3, I can already provide commentary. I imagine that trailer might have made somebody think, do I need to go to the dentist? After seeing those teeth fall out at the beginning.
And isn't that like a known stress dream thing too?
Losing teeth.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just making sure I have the document that has all the dates and things in front of me just in case.
It was oddly timed, by the way, for me watching the the trailer with the teeth falling out as that poor soul transformed into a mind flayer, because I just recently, and I'm late to this party, started watching Channel Zero, that horror anthology show.
Oh.
And in it, there is a monster made entirely out of teeth.
Ew.
Yes.
Oh, that's disturbing.
It's disturbing but glorious.
Is it the Tooth Fairy?
Maybe. I don't know yet. I'm only 2 episodes in.
Oh, man.
But the at least these first few episodes are actually based on a story written by Chris Straub, who's in the C Team.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know he wrote horror. I knew he wrote as like a writer, but I didn't realize that was... Oh, no, that's not true, because he had done all the copy pasta stuff.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
where it came from.
Oh.
So the show took one of his stories from there and turned it into episodes of this TV series, Channel
That's so
Zero.
cool. That is...
And it's really well done.
I wish I was a horror fan, because there is definitely a lot of crossover between, kind of fantasy genre stuff as horror stuff, but just, you can't love everything, right?
Right,
And
right.
I definitely know my likes there. But now I want there to be a tooth fairy monster, because you're like, where do those teeth go?
Maybe it just inserts them onto its body.
Into its body, and it's like made up of teeth, but it's actually this horrifying thing, because it's very macabre actually as a parent having. I now have saved teeth from my children. I'm like, why do I have bones
Exactly.
in my drawers?
Yes.
That I'm like, what am I going to do with those later on?
The bones of your children.
I mean, they're not technically bones, I guess, but
Right,
they're
right.
there's like blood stains on them, and I'm like, oh god, this is nasty. Why do we do this?
So my mom moved recently, and
Found your teeth?
yes, in the baby book, like my teeth, and those teeth are old, but there they are in that little envelope.
650 years old.
Yes, that's right. Us wizards, we hide our age well.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
With all the longevity potions that we've been quaffing.
Yes,
That's what that is, right?
Yeah. This is something.
All right, well, let's do our intro. Are we ready to start recording?
Yep, stay by.
All right. Hello and welcome to Dragon Talk, the official Dungeons & Dragons podcast. I am Greg Tito, and I am not joined by Shelley Mazanoble. I have Mr. Jeremy Crawford here.
Hello, everyone.
How's it going?
It's great.
Thanks for jumping in and co-hosting on this introduction with me.
You know I always love coming in and talking with you.
Exactly, yeah. We were going to do a sage advice with you, but we're going through, and you're introducing our segments for this day. So thank you.
This is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. We just had an awesome event that I was at honoring you as an outstanding voice by the Puget Sound Business Journal's Business of Pride. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
You did such a great job being photographed.
Because, yeah, for those of you joining us, we were just talking about the fact that this photograph makes it look like I maybe ate a small dog before the photo shoot.
Maybe a medium-sized
Yeah.
dog. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's like I look in the photo. It's a great photo, but I look like 10 to 15 pounds heavier than I actually am in real life.
I'm showing it for the people on Twitch who can see potentially. I don't think so at all, but it is a great write-up about your work bringing in LGBTQ characters to Dungeons & Dragons and making sure that, as you said in the interview portion of the stuff last night at the event, that there are characters that are like you in our stories.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that is ever since I was made one of the creative leads for 5th edition, it was important for me that not only in the core books, but in our later stories, we would make it clear that characters of all types can appear in our stories, and then even more importantly, by extension, players of all types are welcome at the D&D table. And that isn't just something I'm passionate about for other people. It's also, I mean, as you pointed out, it's personal for me.
Right.
Because growing up as a gay lad, it was pretty common for me to read a story or play a game, and there wouldn't be a single gay character in the entire story. And so
Right.
it can be really powerful for people if they've never seen a character like themselves in a story, especially these heroic fantasy stories we love telling in D&D. If they've never seen themselves before, it's like you can still enjoy it, but it doesn't have the same power as when there's a character you identify with, and then you start thinking, I could be a hero like that. I could fight injustice in that way. I could, shine light into the shadows the way these characters have done. Or on the flip side, since sometimes in D&D things can go dark, it can also actually be cathartic to see characters where you might have a glimmer of you in them doing villainous things, because sometimes we use storytelling as a way, I think, to almost like work out our inner demons. I sometimes observe what the choices we make in D&D games, and it's like, woo, we would not do that in real life.
Right.
But here we are at the game table.
And it's fun to see like the thought experiment of like what would happen if those choices were made. Exactly.
And people of all types want to have that experience, to have that liberty of stepping into D&D and getting to play in that way. Now, someone listening might be thinking, well, couldn't people, going all the way back to the 70s when D&D came out, couldn't they always have played LGBT characters?
Yeah. Of
course they could. Many of us did. That's not the same as seeing a glimmer of yourself in the official product.
Yeah.
And that experience of being forgotten, if it's never happened to you, it can be hard to identify with sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll see people online say, well, why is this a big deal? But what I would encourage them to do is if they're having a hard time understanding this feeling of wanting to be included, think about a time you might have to, in your thinking, go all the way back to when you were a little kid. Think about some time when you really wanted to be involved in something and you were left out, or you didn't get the credit you thought you deserved, or you just felt overlooked in some way. Now imagine having that feeling on a mass cultural level almost every day of your life.
Yeah.
And then you'll start to have a sense of what it can be like, especially for people who are in parts of our country and other parts of the world where it's actually dangerous, like literally dangerous for them to be out as LGBT people, where they could be arrested or killed. And even in our country, like some of us are fortunate to live in areas like Seattle, where we can live open, happy, accepted lives like many other people. But there are parts of even the United States where people fear for their safety. And so that's why I think it's important in our fantasy stories, not just in D&D, but I hope to see more and more games do the same, to make it so that people can see a little bit of themselves. They can, even if their life is lousy, even if they don't feel seen, and they might not even feel safe in their everyday life, if at least in these wonderful fantasy worlds they go to with their friends, they feel like there's a place for me. And I'm seen.
And you had mentioned the heroic characters as well as the villainous characters, but I think one of the most recent examples in Waterdeep Dragon Heist were the mundane characters. There's Avi and Embrick who own a weaponsmith and an armory together, and for whatever reason, it has just been very much a common occurrence in my game that I'm running, that the characters will check in with them and they'll order some things, and it's just and then it has gotten to the point where like, oh yeah, we'll go talk to that couple that has that shop down the road, and we'll get some weapons and some armor, and it just ends up being part of the fabric of the city of Waterdeep, and I love that it just they're just there and it's part of it.
And I love hearing that, because one of our goals all along has been to be very matter of fact about it.
Yeah.
Like we don't clang pans in our books to say, behold, a gay character is about to appear. No, it's like, no, we treat them as matter of factly as we treat our other characters. Because we feel that part of the glory of creating a fantasy world is these characters can exist without the homophobia and transphobia that exists in our own world.
It's a fantasy world.
It's a fantasy world. They can just be matter-of-factly present like anyone else. And that's why in many of our books, you mentioned Dragon Heist, there are also people in, say, Storm King's Thunder, where we mention the same-sex couples just mixed in with the opposite-sex couples, and we don't give them any sort of special recognition. It's just they're there along with everybody else. They are a matter-of-fact part of this D&D
this community.
experience of this community. And And that's how we want people to experience them. Without it doesn't need a kind of big special. Hey, look, it's
Right.
like no, they're here.
It's part of the fabric, and I really like that. Yeah.
Because for many of us in the real world, we're just here. we don't need because it's funny. Sometimes people will ask me, well, does there need to be a special story reason for an LGBT character to appear in whether it's a D&D story and another story? And my answer is always no. I didn't need a special story to walk into this room.
Right.
There wasn't a special announcement of "Hark, a gay approaches."
The banging of the pans.
Yes,
Still,
exactly.
yeah,
It's
right.
like no, I am just matter-of-factly here, like everyone else is. There doesn't need to be a special story.
Right, and I love that, and I love that there was an event last night honoring all of the work that you've been doing, just making that be apparent, and it's a big part of what I love about this D&D community is being as inclusive and bringing people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, all are welcome playing this game, because it is all about taking on the shoes of other people and providing empathy for characters who are different than you are, and nothing really does that quite like Dungeons & Dragons does. And I just want to make sure we have our guest coming on later for the interview portion of this podcast. And I'm blanking on her name. Thank you, Alice Cleaver. I keep having Alice Childress in my name. It was a Ben Folds song. And I'm like, no, it's not that. Alice Cleaver, who has made a big point about bringing in new folks from other communities or are new to Dungeons & Dragons or tabletop role-playing games in general. And I loved in all that conversation, it was always about, like, it doesn't matter who you are or where you came in from or any kind of negative experience you might have had with the hobby or gaming in general, to join at the Scraticus Academy and be a big part of that. And so look for that interview after this. It's been very exciting, and one of my favorite things about the D&D community, especially after we just kind of all got together at D&D Live and got to celebrate not only the community and the creativity of the cosplay and the storytelling and all of the games that were being played there, but then the fact that we get to celebrate this new story that's coming out. Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus.
Our journey to hell.
Well, we're going to hell.
Yes.
There is a lot there.
A whole ton there. Because I'm thinking about it, and it's like, not only do you get to go to Avernus, but we also have our massive section in that book on Baldur's Gate.
Yes.
Which, now that Baldur's Gate 3 has been announced,
yes,
we can also point out a little more why we're going to Baldur's Gate, because also we knew this video game was coming, which we couldn't talk about at D&D Live.
I know, right? There was a lot of like getting to it, and oddly, no one asked at the event as to like, hey, there's a video game series that's about this city. And now, hopefully, people are able to put one and one together and equals 666. But I'm very excited because there's a whole section in Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus that is just a gazetteer about what is happening in the city.
Yeah, and meant to really be a little mini campaign setting.
Yeah.
So, even if a group decides, we're not interested in going to Avernus and seeing what's going on there, well, you still have this whole Baldur's Gate gazetteer that you can pick up and build your own campaign there.
Yeah, and a lot of people know and love that city due to obviously the video game, as you mentioned, there's a huge tapestry to jump in there with characters like Minsk and Boo and all these other lore things that we're going to be highlighting on Lore You Should Know over the next few months if we haven't already. So that adventure is coming out September 17th. It has 2 covers available. One is by Tyler Jacobson, who's done amazing work on D&D since 5th edition with, I believe he did the Monster Manual as well as the Player's Handbook.
Mm-hmm.
The dungeon screen Reincarnated has that amazing image that he did of the Red Dragon going across it. And he took on dramatizing the character of Zariel on the cover for the standard cover of Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus. And then we have an alternate cover by Hydro74, who did Xanathar's Guide to Everything as well as Volo's Guide to Monsters. I can't pick which one I like better. I think they're both so good, those covers.
And that keeps happening when we do these alternate covers where, for a moment, like, well, which one do I like better? I just love them both.
I know, right? Got to collect them all.
Yes.
Speaking of which, we have Ghosts of Saltmarsh on shelves now. It is a deep dive into aquatic storytelling. So very
nice pun there.
Yeah, I like to. Yeah, we got to use it while we can.
Yes.
We're going deep here. We're plunging the depths. we're getting wet. I don't know. I can't. No more. But
this book is going to make you damp with content. Because of the seawater.
Right, exactly. We're not going to be waterlogged or anything. But yes, it's got tons of adventures that you can pull out individually and play if you are want to spice up your game with some nautical play, or you can run it as a campaign through 12 levels if that was your jam. And there's also a gazetteer about the village of Saltmarsh in the world of Greyhawk. There's lots of references to Greyhawk type of goings on, but it's not necessarily a brand new setting. It's just more of a setting agnostic way to jump into what's happening on the high seas. And there's also a appendix all about the sea and how to run sea vessels and things like that.
Yeah. That there are some really wonderful aquatic adventure locations in that appendix. Underwater places, up out on the high seas. Mm-hmm. It's another example. It's funny. I just realized we keep doing this where it's sort of like, well, if you don't want to run the adventure, here's this awesome thing at the back that you can use to build your own fun stuff. Because many of our DMs are essentially hobbyists and love building their own things. And so often we'll provide, here's the main story, or in the case of Ghosts of Saltmarsh, here are multiple stories, but then here's a toolkit too if you want to build your own.
Yeah, I love that multi-pronged attack for books like this, because you're right. People might not want to run it whole cloth, from back to front and just be like, this is the campaign I'm running.
Or even from front to back. But now I want to try out your campaign, Greg. Where you start at the end, and it's like that movie Memento.
Yes, it's like in media res. Like you start at the end, and then record scratch. I bet you're wondering how we got here. Yeah, maybe I've been. Yeah, whatever. So that there's all these different ways that you can use the material that's in there, and it is I think what makes these books worthwhile for both players, DMs, anybody who is just a fan of the hobby in general. They can use the tools as inspiration and use it for their home worlds, something that's not even set in the Forgotten Realms. There's so much there to be had, and that was been the philosophy, I think, for Fifth.
Yeah,
pretty
absolutely.
much since the core rule books, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have always wanted to empower people to either use the thing we have made for you, or basically rip it apart for parts, and build your own hot rod. And I mean, that's why the core books are filled, especially the DMG, with so many tools for people to take and build their own goodies. But then we do that in book after book after book since the release of the core books.
And it continues on, as we were just saying, with Baldur's Gate, because there is so much you can just pull apart and use for whatever story you want to tell.
Yeah. And including if you want to do Hell, but tell your own story, there's also a lot of really juicy stuff there. I say that as a DM who, at D&D Live was just DMing in Avernus, and it was gratifying to me taking my game designer hat off and putting my DM hat on, that I was able to take the book and go to the section on Avernus, and there were enough just general guidelines on here's what adventuring is like in Avernus. I was able to take that and really quickly build the little adventure that I ran at D&D Live. People might be wondering, does that little adventure appear in the book? It doesn't, but Mad Maggie, the central NPC I played, she is definitely in the book.
And your portrayal of Mad Maggie was chef kiss.
Joy.
So good.
I could honestly play hags all day long.
I'm so glad we got to put you on a stage and have you play a hag, because I've played a few sessions with you as a hag, and it is extremely memorable. And so I'm glad that the greater public got to experience that. Maybe a PG-13 version of the hags.
Yes. For those of you who have not experienced my private DMing as a hag, their language tends to be a bit saltier than there were actually, and I noticed this. I just poked in and looked at a few bits of video from the game I ran.
Yeah.
And I can spot the parts where I was pausing ever so slightly because I had to edit myself live, where I was just about to say something really, really not PG-13 and had to quickly cut it off before it came out of my mouth. So
I appreciate that.
So at some point we could do a director's cut of Mad Maggie.
We'll do Jeremy After Dark as Mad Maggie. That'll be fun. So we have already spoken about what goes on with the Warlords for a Laurie Chanel segment with Adam, and let's go now to another segment in which he talks about kind of the stuff leading up to what is happening in Avernus with the Hellriders. So let's go with some bings and bongs and listen to a Laurie Chanel. Excellent. I was realizing we were going a little bit long, as we always do. We only have 20 minutes left, and we got to do a midtro and an outro too.
It is always dangerous.
It is always dangerous.
You get the two of us on here, and everyone, Greg and I will come together and like, the Sage of Ice segment will take 10 or 15 minutes. 45 minutes later, we are still talking about it.
And there's more to talk about.
Yes.
I always have to cut you off because I'm like, oh my God, I know there's so many more questions I want to ask. Eventually, we'll just be podcasting all day, you and I, and we'll just have it go on forever. The Infinity Podcast. I dig it. All right, ready to record the midtro? Man, I'm so glad Adam was able to jump in and elucidate about all of the work that he's been doing, putting in, making this adventure, and the Hellriders is a great story. So hopefully more people can glean info from that, preparing for their jump into Baldur's Gate descent into Avernus.
And the Hellriders and a lot of the other NPCs are so well fleshed out that people are going to be able to just grab them, and I think spin adventure after adventure if they want to, just using that fabulous cast of NPCs.
Speaking of a fabulous cast of NPCs, we have another book coming out very soon, June 18th, Acquisitions Incorporated, the book, which has several different casts of characters that you can pull off the shelf and play in your game if you're interested.
Yeah, if you have always dreamt of having Omen Drawn and Jim Dark Magic in your campaign, and I hope especially as villains.
What does it say, Jeremy?
This book is for you. Well, because at D&D Live, Jerry Holkins and I were joking backstage that in some ways Ack Inc. is really a campaign about villains, or at least sort of villains in their early career. You know, you can imagine them just turning into terrible, terrible people, and Omen is already pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Later on, and so I imagine some people will take the Ack Inc. book and they will build their own franchise. They will be a part of the gloriously amoral Acquisitions Incorporated family. But then you might have other groups who get that book, and their whole mission is going to be to take down this amoral, often terrible corporation. And you can use the stat blocks of the characters either as allied NPCs, villains, or both. And the book also has the C team fully statted out, and a number of other characters who have appeared over the last decade in different Acquisitions Incorporated stories.
That's so cool. There's a campaign as well, 6 levels of which you can take, from an early member of a Acquisitions Incorporated franchise to at least the mid-level there.
Yeah.
But you're right. I haven't really considered that. They could end up being taking over AI from within and take down their corporate overlords. I mean, there's something really chaotic good about that story.
Yeah. Do a hostile takeover and play the whole thing out.
I Love it. I love it. And similar to what we were just talking about for other books, you can use pieces of that and build your own stories and campaigns of it. And maybe, Rosie Beestinger is actually in Avernus.
Yeah.
Cursed to be dealing with all of her sins there. And you can combine and put her on the high seas with Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I mean, that's right. We just provide these tools, and you can tell whatever story you want with them.
Another great tool in that book is there's the whole system about not only creating a franchise, but also your character taking on different roles within the corporation and those roles conferring different abilities. I could see people using that material to play in Acquisitions Incorporated, but I could also see people taking it and riffing on it and like, oh, I'm going to create this other organization with a similar structure, with different roles that confer abilities. We did something a little similar with the guilds in Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, where your standing in a particular guild conferred upon you different benefits. So people will see something. It's similar, but has its own twists in the Acquisitions Incorporated book.
That's super cool. And one thing that I like about the Ac Inc. book is that there's going to be people who have watched and played, and maybe this is their first time wanting to jump in to play Dungeons & Dragons using the material there. And we also introduced a whole bunch of products at D&D Live that is all about onboarding new players as well. There is the Dungeons & Dragons versus Rick and Morty tabletop role-playing game adventure. That's the official title. It has all those words in there. We'll have Kate Welch on soon to talk more about that book as an onboarding thing for fans of Rick and Morty. Really great stuff there. But the D&D Essentials Kit is also all about having a rule book designed, at least in 5th edition, teaching new players how to make their first character.
Yes. So that product, the Essentials Kit, was a lot of fun to work on. Chris Perkins and I, we divided up the writing responsibilities. He wrote the Great Adventure that's in the set, and I wrote the rule book.
Yeah.
And if people are wondering, well, what's different about this rule book from the one in the starter set? Well, first off, it's twice as long, and we needed those extra pages.
Seems to be a theme for this interview. We're very verbose here at the Dungeons & Dragons team.
It's twice as long because we needed those pages to give you character creation rules. In the starter set, you get pre-made characters. In the Essentials Kit, we give you the rules for making a character of your own. We have 5 different classes in that booklet, all of the basic rules you need to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And also a special twist is at the end, we give you the ability to have a sidekick that makes it possible for one person to play an adventure with one DM.
I love that.
And because your character will then have this other character with them, or potentially multiple other characters with them. If people are curious about what the sidekicks look like in terms of their rules, we previewed a version of those rules in Unearthed Arcana a while ago, calling them the sidekick rules. And we were actually experimenting with those rules specifically for this Essentials Kit.
Yeah.
And the version people see in the kit reflects some of the playtest feedback we got from that Unearthed Arcana.
And the Essentials Kit comes with cards. You have to punch them out and tear them apart. So I don't want to misrepresent it, but there is perforations there. But on the cards, you can actually see what the sidekicks look like.
Yes.
Because Sean Wood did illustrations for each one of these sidekicks that just look amazing. He's got such a wonderful eye. He's done a lot of the character work for Force Grey. So if you recognize those portraits, you might see some continuity there. And I think that's just really a great visual cue, especially for new players to be like, okay, this is the person that I'm recruiting. You have a physical card that you can put in front of you. It's like, okay, this person is on my side. One quick question, because we do want to eventually get to our interview with Alice Cleaver from Straticus Academy, who's also all about onboarding new players. But I need to ask this question. Is this the first time there has been official rules for Dungeons & Dragons that have one-on-one play?
So if I remember correctly, it has been experimented with before, but we have not forefronted it in this same way, the way we do in this set. there was like way back in the day with basic D&D, there was solo play actually in the old red box.
Oh, right.
There was
But that was like a
sort of a choose
pick your
own
path.
Yeah, sort of choose your yes, a pick your path.
Pick
Thank
your
you.
path before you said the protected words.
Yes. That was much more, pick your path experience, and certainly tons of DMs over the last 4+ decades have experimented with one DM, one player, but we wanted to make it so that the rules themselves supported that style of play.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because we hear about that all the time as being like, oh, that's how I first played, was just these one-on-one sessions, or people even now who are like, I prefer that because it's you don't have to deal with different personalities. You can really get into delving into a very personal story between two people who are working together to tell the story together. So I'm glad that we are forefronting it like we are.
Absolutely. And it was important to us to forefront it in this product because we realized that sometimes you'll have somebody jazzed to try out D&D, but then they immediately have the issue of finding players.
Right.
So we wanted to make it as easy as possible for them that if they could just find one player, they can do it with this set.
I love it. All right, cool. Well, the Essentials Kit comes out on June 24th in North America only at Target stores. You'll find it there first. It will be available everywhere in the North American region on September 3rd of this year. So look for it there. And it's got lots of great stuff. We showed it all off in various ways during D&D Live, so check it out on the video on demand if you're interested there. But on to our interview with someone who is very good about onboarding new players. Their entire community, Scraticus Academy, is about being inclusive and getting more people who are interested in playing Dungeons & Dragons playing. So here is my interview with Alice Kleber. I keep thinking I'm saying the name wrong. I hate when I do that. I'm so sorry, Alice, if you're still watching. But that's why I was pausing and hesitating it, because I'm like paranoid I'm just doing it all wrong, even though we have talked and I'd said your name many times, whatever. Weird things that get in your head when you're on the mic and you're like, I'm doing it all wrong.
Yes. Where basic words start sounding like some kind of arcane cipher.
Yes.
And then you discover you summoned something.
Yeah. I mean, even earlier when me and Pelham were talking, he pronounced Thaco or something like that. And I was like, is that how you do it?
Don't pronounce it that way, Pelham. There is a...
You were like, it was like taco. It was like Thaco.
There is a fiend that will appear if you say it a certain number of times. I won't tell you the number of times because I don't want you to experiment.
And it's random. We have to roll to figure out exactly what that number is.
Man. You do not want to see what happens when the Thaco manifests at your table.
Yeah, he's very thick.
Beware.
Yeah. Now we need to create an NPC in Avernus who is just like that. All right, ready? You're already recording, aren't you? I heard the clicks. Ready for the outro? We have 10 minutes. That should be easy. We can do an outro in 10 minutes. No problem.
When have we ever gone over time?
Never. Not once. That was an amazing interview with Alice. Thank you so much for calling in and joining it. I love all of the work that you are doing. They are playing more than 10 sessions of RPG content a week at Scraticus Academy. Tons of different systems, lots of different people bringing in new players all the time. And so it's very gratifying, and I wish them all the success. It's doing really great.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wow.
I know.
I want to play that much.
That's what I was starting to think. I was like, wait a second, we don't even play that much.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll obviously do lots of play tests and play as much as we can, but man, that is a lot.
A whole lot. But I mean, it sounds like a game convention, but like stretched out over a week, and then another week,
And another week, right?
Wow, that's dreamy.
I know. It's almost what people think it's like to work on Dungeons & Dragons. Like, oh, you just play games all day.
Yes.
How many times have you gotten that question?
Oh God, all the time, and I just think, if only. No, it is a lot of work, and I mean, as you know, most of our time is actually spent writing and meeting about the writing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
Some play testing, then.
But
more
even the play
meetings.
testing is, I mean, it's fun. We can definitely have a good time when we play test, but by no means is it like all fun and games.
Right.
We
right.
have to, think about things critically, and it's a lot of discussion while we're doing the play testing and things like that. So it is also work when that happens.
And often the playtest ends with somebody having, or multiple somebodies having to write a report about the playtest we just did.
Right.
So that we can make good adjustments in our games based on that testing.
Play begets work, begets more play, begets more work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful job, but contrary to what many people think, we aren't just playing D&D all day long.
Maybe we should. Maybe we should just do that.
I would love that.
Let's just do like a week where everybody in the office, and all of Wizards of the Coast, just plays games nonstop. All right, we're going to make that happen. Is there any other thing we wanted to chat about before we close this out? Anything that you're working on that you wanted to talk about? Well, actually, not working on, but things that you're excited about. Well, Baldur's Gate 3, we only mentioned that a little bit, but we're very excited about that announcement. Larian, we've been working with for a long time on this game. I'm so glad we were able to keep it as under wraps as we were able to.
Because it has been several years that we have known that this was coming.
Yeah.
And have had members of our department working with Larian. And so, yeah, it's thrilling that it's finally out there, and so gratifying that people are psyched about this game coming out. Watching that trailer, wonderfully horrifying, and I just keep thinking there's going to be big business for orthodontia in Baldur's Gate. Because for some,
is that the noun version, the orthodontia?
Yes, because for me, I don't know what it is. There's something about those teeth that that is what sticks in my mind.
That like image where he's got them in his hands.
Yes. Well, it's just so horrifying, the idea that your teeth would be popping out.
Oh, gross. Well, for me, it's that like I mean, and we're describing a little bit of a body horror thing. So
yes.
I apologize if we're catching you unawares from the trailer for Baldur's Gate 3 that Larian has put up. But it's that the expansion of the tentacles coming from the face that got me.
Yes. Yeah.
Gross. But mind flayers are gross, and
they are gross and they are horrifying. I've seen some people online, pondering, is that how mind flayers come to be? Sure is. And if people are curious about the horrors of how mind flayers come to be, we have a whole chapter on it in Volo's Guide to Monsters.
That's right.
Where we talk all about how they transform other creatures into themselves. They are a nasty, nasty folk.
They are indeed. And there is a bit of a different process that is shown in the trailer. Right? I mean, that's not how it's described exactly in Volo's Guide to Monsters, and you'll find out exactly why that is at some point. I'm not going to say when, but in the future, you'll know, and we are definitely aware that it is different from how it is exactly described in Volo's. So there are some big fans on the Twitters who have pointed that out, and I salute you.
But even to those fans, I bring up Volo's because the principle is the same.
That's true.
That they are taking over others for their own uses.
And as a big video gamer, we often talk about all of the games that you're playing, and you make wonderful recommendations for me to jump in onto various RPGs out there. Were you a fan of the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2? Did you play those a bunch back when they came out?
So I didn't. And
really?
Yeah, the reason was I didn't have a computer that was really game capable. So I didn't finally play Baldur's Gate 1 until years later, and I'm trying to remember, but at some point it was re-released, and I finally played it. Now, I did have some friends who played it. I would occasionally, watch them, because I had several friends who had either, a PC or... Years ago, I also had a friend with a Commodore Amiga.
Oh, Amiga!
Yeah, where I would get to watch games on that computer.
Yeah.
So I finally got to try it many years later, and of course was wowed by the depth of it, how much of D&D made it into the game, and then you can see to this day the influence of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 in so many other video games.
For sure.
And also just the influence of D&D, partly because the Baldur's Gate games do such a great job of communicating what different aspects of the D&D play experience feel like.
Yeah.
And when working with Larian, it was important for us that 5th edition be expressed in Baldur's Gate 3, but it's also good for people to know it is not meant to be like an exact simulation of 5th edition, because as much as we love the game we make, we made it for a tabletop experience, and so it's important for, in our minds, a video game to be the best video game experience,
Right.
and not just sort of a facsimile of an entirely different game.
Yeah, we have been trying to put out there that it's based on 5th edition spells and mechanics of D&D, but it is going to be the version of it that works the best for a digital audience.
Exactly.
Right, and I think what is great about those, first Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 was for me, it was the storytelling that wasn't even the most epic storytelling. I liked the fact that you could go on these weird tangents or do things that didn't have anything to do with progressing the overall epic story, but could investigate these companions and their stories. And obviously, Minsk and Boo are often put on a pedestal as being the most memorable, but it was because at the time, they were so strange and weird, and it wasn't the type of thing you experienced in video games to have this combo character type thing. And so those are the most memorable things, and I think those are what has inspired tons of CRPGs to emulate, and I think what Larian is going to be picking up and running with when people find out more about what's happening with Baldur's Gate 3.
And that side content is always my doom in
yeah, right?
in an RPG.
That's I will just do that.
Yep. So, I'm imagining when I'm sitting down to glory in all of the content in Baldur's Gate 3, I'm going to be faced by all, this epic story, all these horrors that need to be stopped, but they're like, "Oh, you need me to save this dog?"
That's so D&D. There's just to bring it back full circle to my campaign that's going on in Dragon Heist right now, and the Waterdeep Wazoo physical object that is in the Platinum Edition that Beadle and Green put out. There's a lost dog in one moment, and my party has always been like, "Well, what are we gonna do now?" And they're like, "Well, there's that dog. You can try to find that dog."
Yep.
And it's a running joke that goes on forever and ever. And you're right, that is for whatever reason the thing that latched on to players and that type of stuff, and that's D&D to a T. Mm-hmm. Well, Jeremy, how can people find out about what you're doing, follow you, ask you tons of questions about what dogs they can save?
The best place is on Twitter, where I am Jeremy E. Crawford.
I apologize for tagging you in something where it was just at Crawford or something like that, or it was Jeremy E. or some weird auto-corrected version of that tag.
I was actually fine with it. I was just feeling for that other person because they're like, "Well, what is this Dungeons and Dragons stuff?"
If they don't know now, they know what's happening. What's up? You can follow me. I'm at Greg Tito. If you want to find out more information about what's happening with D&D, there's always dungeonsanddragons.com. You can follow on Twitter, Wizards_DND. A new issue of Dragon Plus is coming out very soon, if not already by the time you listen to this in podcast form. You can download that to your Android or iOS device from the various app stores, or you can get that content on the web at dragonmag.com. Bart Hill does a wonderful job putting all that together, and thanks to Jeremy for appearing on the Dragon Plus show as a semi-regular to talk through Unearthed Arcana and all the fun stuff that's going on there for Sage Advice. So look for some of that content coming out very soon. And I want to give a shout out to Shelly Moo. You should follow her and make sure she's doing all right. She will be returning next week as we talk to some more fun folks in the community. All right. Well, there's only one thing to do, and that is to is those rocks going to? Oh gosh. Oh god. Oh no. They're all falling. They're That's a Baldur's Gate 2 reference. That is how Baldur's Gate 2 ends, right? Oh wait, we're still live. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. We are all done. It is 3:00. We need to get out of here because Binwin Plays Idle Champions is about to begin. Thank you to Jeremy Crawford for jumping in and doing some guest hosting.
It's great to be here.
Thank you to Ryan Marth for making me say sketchy. And thanks for Pellin for being here in the banter session from 12 noon. Shout out to everybody on chat. You may not have been able to speak in chat because we heard that Twitch chat was down, but hopefully it's back. You're all great. We'll be back next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.